The Myth of the Swan and Daphne, a story of love and transformation. In a world where gods and mortals coexist, myths emerge as immortal echoes of deep emotions, indescribable beauty, and the constant struggle between power and fragility. Today, we will explore a lesser-known but equally moving myth, the myth of the Swan and Daphne. It is a story of unexpected love, of connection between different worlds, and of sacrifice. Daphne, an extraordinary mortal, comes into contact with Fëanor, a god tired of immortality, who finds refuge in the guise of a majestic swan. This tale reveals the complex dance between the human and the divine, where the boundaries of mortality and eternity become blurred. Daphne was a unique mortal, known for her grace and deep love of nature. Her life was deeply rooted in the forests and rivers that surrounded her, and she was said to have a special connection with every animal that inhabited those places. Unlike other people, Daphne avoided the distractions of the human world, preferring the serenity of the natural environment. The story begins on a quiet dawn, with Daphne walking barefoot through a mist-shrouded forest. As she gathered wildflowers and listened to the murmur of a crystal-clear stream, her spirit seemed to be completely in sync with her surroundings. The forest, so full of life, seemed to correspond to her, with birds singing in harmony and the trees gently leaning towards her, as if recognizing an old friend. Far from the mortal world, in the celestial realm, Fëanor watched with somber eyes. He was a powerful god, but he carried the weight of eternity and the loneliness that comes with immortality. The constant fighting between the gods had worn down his spirit, and the bustle of the celestial realm no longer offered him comfort. In search of peace, Fëanor decided to temporarily abandon his divine duties. To avoid the attention and wars that could follow him, he took the form of a swan. This swan was not ordinary. Its feathers seemed to reflect the light of the stars, and its every movement radiated an unusual majesty. On a quiet evening beside a lake that looked like a mirror of the sky, Daphne saw him for the first time. At first, the swan stood at a distance, watching her from the water. There was something about her, a calm, a connection to the world around her, that captured the attention of the disguised god. Daphne, noticing the swan's presence, was captivated by its beauty. However, she did not approach it immediately. There was something inexplicably different about this creature, something that even she, so connected to nature, could not understand. As days turned into weeks, the swan slowly began to approach Daphne. Intrigued but also wary at first, she accepted his presence. Hours became moments shared at the water's edge, with Fëanor singing melodious songs and Daphne responding with her own delicate gestures. Although they did not share a language, their silences spoke louder than any words. Daphne felt an inexplicable calm when the swan was near, as if an invisible force protected her. Fëanor, for his part, found in this relationship a way to escape the heavy burden of his immortality. Unbeknownst to Daphne, small signs began to betray the swan's true nature. Its feathers would sometimes gleam like fire in the sunlight, and its shadow would take on strange shapes as it passed through the forest. One day, in a moment of vulnerability, Fëanor decided to reveal his true identity. Before Daphne's disbelieving eyes, the swan temporarily transformed into his divine form, an ethereal god, majestic and powerful, whose presence seemed to make the very air vibrate. Fëanor explained the reason for his exile and how he had found her. His loneliness had been relieved by the purity and strength of Daphne, who represented everything the gods had forgotten, genuine connection to the living world. But the love between a mortal and a god never goes unnoticed. Other gods, jealous of Fëanor and suspicious of his relationship with a mortal, began to spy on this union. They believed that Fëanor was abandoning his divine responsibilities for something as ephemeral as a relationship with a human. One day, as Daphne strolled near the lake, a cold, unnatural wind blew up, a sign that greater forces were at hand. The gods, unable to understand the connection between Fëanor and Daphne, saw her as a threat to their own supremacy. The gods decided to act. Realizing that Fëanor's only weak point was his love for the mortal, they attempted to use her as a tool to force him to return to the celestial world. Daphne, caught in a conflict larger than herself, found herself in danger. Fëanor struggled between two worlds, his duties as a god and his love for a mortal. The threat looming over Daphne broke his heart, and he knew he would have to make a choice. The only way to protect Daphne from the jealousy and wrath of the other gods was to ensure that she was no longer within the reach of her enemies. In an act of pure love, Fëanor made the heartbreaking decision to transform Daphne into something eternal, incorruptible, a laurel tree. In a final encounter beneath the starry sky, Fëanor used his divine power to bring about the transformation. As Daphne turned into a tree, her branches began to glow, reflecting the serenity of her spirit and the beauty of her soul. Though her form changed, Daphne never ceased to exist. Now, as a laurel tree, she contained the essence of life and unchanging beauty. Fëanor, devastated but determined to honor her, vowed to care for her forever. He could often be seen, still as a swan, hovering among the laurel branches, singing the same songs he had once shared with her. The myth of Daphne and Fëanor becomes a profound meditation on love and sacrifice. Daphne represents humanity's resistance to forces beyond its control, while her transformation symbolizes the eternal connection between the mortal and the divine. Just as the laurel never loses its greenness, the love and memory of Daphne and Fëanor remain eternal. The laurel also acquired a broader meaning in later myths, becoming a symbol of glory, beauty and triumph in various cultures. The story of the Swan and Daphne reminds us that myths are not just tales of ancient times, but mirrors of our own struggles and loves. In this story, love transcends form, sacrifice finds its immortality, and nature always holds a place for those who respect and revere it. Perhaps, as we walk among the trees or listen to the song of a swan, we can feel a fragment of this eternal story, rooted in time and under the rustling of the leaves of an eternally living laurel.